ladies and gents, here we are to talk about the latest news across the Championship from the past few days. Of course, we had the shocking news that Steven Schumacher had been sacked on Monday, and just a handful of days later, we've already got an update on who's replacing him. Stoke have appointed Narcís Pèlach as their new manager on a 3-year deal. It's, as I say, after Steven Schumacher was dismissed on Monday. Pèlach joins from Norwich, where he's been coach since last year. He previously worked at Huddersfield. He'll be joined by goalkeeper coach Paul Clements, as well as former Stoke midfielder Dean Whitehead. Come on, love that. I always love an ex-player returning as a coach somewhere, Justin.
Yeah, it's always good. Obviously, Ryan Shawcross took to the dugout for their Carabao Cup game, their League Cup game, which was also amazing to see, just to see Shawcross in the dugout. You're just always intrigued as to what style of football they'll play.
Bring back the Pulis boys. That's what we want. Shawcross, Whitehead, Ricardo Fuller. What's he doing nowadays?
But will they play Pulis ball, or will Shawcross be deploying tiki-taka?
Probably not.
We need to know. But it's good to see Dean Whitehead returning to the club, because again, just these players that are revered, it's always good to see club legends coming back.
I'm not sure he's a club legend, particularly at Stoke, but
he's highly regarded.
Yeah,
but Stoke are very good at that, because they obviously brought Rory Delap back to the dugout, didn't they?
Yeah,
which I don't think particularly went well.
Well, they got John Walters as the sporting director now as well.
Yeah,
just stick to that side. Get them all.
Doing?
Yeah, Bojan was a bit afterwards, I suppose, wasn't he? But what's? I'll put myself on the spot now to try and think of someone else. Andy Wilkinson, what's he doing nowadays?
What's Leon Cole doing?
Yeah. Well, Justin, we spoke about this appointment on Monday in our special reaction pod. That pod was mostly dedicated to the Schumacher sacking and how shocking that was. And the Pèlach links, they were very fresh news to us at the time. Since then, we've had time to digest this, and I've read up a bit more about him than I had chance to before we recorded that pod on Monday. And I've got to say, I'm a lot more on board with this appointment now. This guy is a highly rated coach. Of course, used to work with Carlos Corberán at Huddersfield. And I'm told Corberán has been trying for a long time to try and get him to join him at West Brom. He regards Pèlach very highly, and we all know how much we rate Carlos Corberán on this podcast. And Pèlach has turned down quite a few jobs in recent years, most notably Lommel in Belgium, who are part of the City Group. Now, they wanted to get Pèlach in, which I think is a sign of them saying, not only do we rate this guy, obviously, because we want him as manager, but let's get him into the group because he could be very useful to us down the line, potentially at one of our bigger clubs, no disrespect to Lommel. So it seems like he's been biding his time, waiting for the right opportunity to come along, and he thinks this is it. And look, we've spoken before about how ballsy a call it is from John Walters to sack Steven Schumacher, with him obviously being the sporting director, because of how quickly this has been done, though. It's quite clear that Walters has done it because he wants to get this guy in. So for the first time in a long time, I'm feeling a bit of optimism for Stoke because of this move to get Pèlach in, Justin. What do you think?
It's a bold move. It really is a bold move, because they're going from a young, highly rated manager in Steven Schumacher, who has managerial experience and success, and going for a highly rated coach who has none of that experience. That being said, I'm not against the idea of the appointment. On Monday, I was merely questioning the ambition of the club and the direction that John Walters is wanting to take the managerial situation in. It's just a strange one. But as you say, Pèlach is a very highly rated coach. I know he's well liked amongst players as well. He's very good at developing those relationships, which again can go a long way. You've got Stoke there who are in need of someone to just put them in their footballing bosom and nurture them and take them on. And Pèlach could well be that guy. I don't think Alex Neil particularly did that very well. He just was always grumpy. Michael O'Neill did his very best. I don't think we had enough time to really judge Steven Schumacher on that. So Pèlach could well be the guy to do that. And as you say, I think the City Group aspect is quite interesting. I think the most recent example we can bring is Des Buckingham. He was part of that that network of clubs, and he's going on and he's doing a good job at Oxford now. So that might speak volumes. But I think with Pèlach is, you've got a manager there who, as you say, or a potential manager, is highly rated, is in need of, or a club is in need of someone to take them in a fresh direction, and someone with that sort of perspective, but they don't have any experience, but they do have a very good, effective skill set. Yeah, could be that guy.
I will point out he does have some managerial experience. He's had more time as a manager in Spain than I think we both realised when we were doing the pod on Monday. Even though it wasn't at a particularly high level, but he's also had experience being the caretaker boss at Huddersfield as well. But the thing is with me, Justin, the reason I'm feeling particularly optimistic about this one is because Stoke's past appointments have been very samey. You know, Stephen Schumacher, Alex Neil. It's all just, you know, managers who have shown a bit of promise at another club, and then it's just kind of petered out into a nothing kind of situation. And to be honest, it looked like Stephen Schumacher was probably heading down that same road. I didn't really have enough confidence that Stephen Schumacher was a brilliant enough manager to completely turn things around at Stoke. But this is a punt. That's undeniable. This is a punt. And I can appreciate them doing something a bit different and just seeing how it goes. It may go completely wrong. It may blow up in their faces. But at least John Walters is trying something different with this one. And if his coaching ability translates into being a great manager, then it could end up being an absolutely sublime move by Stoke.
Yeah, it could be. And I think that's the interesting thing is they've never taken a punt, have they? They've never taken a massive risk. Gary Rowett was a very safe appointment, had success in the Championship with Derby. Michael O'Neill, Nathan Jones, again, was an up-and-coming manager who was a fair risk at the time, but you know he'd had a lot of managerial experience and success to sort of convince you that he might be the guy. Michael O'Neill was probably the safest yet most puntist appointment they could have gone with because he didn't have club experience or much club experience, especially not in the Championship anyway. And then obviously Alex Neil, blah blah blah. We can go on. So to go down the Pèlach route where he's got very minimal managerial experience, especially not at the top level like the Championship, it is a risk. And sometimes you do need to tear up the rule book and bring in a guy who's got a very fresh perspective, who's very sort of eyes wide open to the world, very, very optimistic, if you like, and take a chance on them. And he's very young as well. And
new ideas.
New ideas, yeah. You are absolutely new ideas, new ways of implementing those ideas. They don't have any prior sort of experience and judgment to sort of, they're not going to rinse and repeat what they've been doing at a previous club and take it into a new club. It's very much new. Everything's new. And that is a positive. It's just a risk, and I think that's the one thing that does concern me is are Stoke the sort of club that takes risks? They're not. They're very safe. Even if you go back to Tony Pulis, Mark Hughes, these are very safe appointments. To that is, in recent years, look how that's worked out for them. They've not finished higher than 14th since being relegated from the Premier League in 2018. Mm-hmm. So why not take a risk? Why not see if this can be something different? Yeah, just the only thing I would say with that is they could be in a position where they sack another manager in 6 months' time.
Maybe they will. They will. That it may entirely be the case, but at least they're trying something different, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. No. Again, I do agree with that. It's just the exhaustion of going through the same thing over and over again with Stoke. They've had 4 managers since they were relegated from the Premier League, 1 head coach, so five at the helm. They've had various sort of movement upstairs. 3 technical directors, director of football. Recruitment team completely changed around a couple of times as well. It's been a lot of hurdles, a lot of frustration amongst Stoke fans. That's why the attendance has been dwindling over the years. So it's just very tiring for them. It's very tiring for them. It's very tiring for us. And this could be it. But again, they could be in another position, the same position in 6 months' time. It's just, that's how football goes, but it's just a risk. It's just a risk.
Of course it is. It definitely is a risk. There's no denying that. But we've got a guy here who's only 36 years old. He's been coaching for a fair while now on these shores, but is still only 36 years old. And what do I always say, Justin? What do I always say with these kind of appointments? Look how it's worked out for Ipswich with Kieran McKenna. Look how it's worked out with Sheffield Wednesday with Danny Ward. I know they've not had a great start to the season, but still. And And then you could even go to the likes of Steve Cooper, for example, at Swansea and then at Forest and now Leicester. You know, these kind of appointments are working out a lot more than they're not in recent years. So you try it, see what happens, because otherwise Stoke could very easily have gone with someone like, I don't know, someone of the same mould as Alex Neil, and it just end up falling flat on its face and ends up not being a very inspiring appointment. That's no disrespect to Alex Neil, but, you know, he's a recognisable name, and someone like Pèlach, new ideas, new set of eyes on things, could end up being a fantastic bit of business from a Stoke City perspective. One final thing I will say about the Stoke drama from the past few days, Justin, is it's been brought to my attention the absolutely pathetic amount of tabloid newspapers trying to milk the SEO results as much as possible with Steven Schumacher's sacking. I saw one headline reading, ex-Manchester United man given championship job after shock sacking. That ex-Manchester United man being Ryan Shawcross, who was made caretaker manager. He made 2 appearances in the League Cup for Man U. It's pathetic.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you got to get those hits, and that's real journalism right there. It's real journalism, and that's how you what's the word I'm looking for?
Clickbait.
You know, clickbait. That's how you clickbait. That is how you do it, because that will fool the non-footballing lot. Because they'll all think it's Paul Scholes.
Or just someone like that. You think that's bad? The Daily Mail went with Championship club sack manager and replaced him with one of Arsenal's most hated enemies.
Jose Mourinho. Jose Mourinho is in charge of Stoke. Amazing. Yeah, that was a good one.
It's just so unnecessary. It's happened years ago. Why are they still milking that cow? It's absolutely unbelievable. Pathetic from everyone involved. Justin, let's take a quick break. After that, we'll talk about Cardiff's managerial situation as well as some good old-fashioned League Cup madness. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. Here we are talking about some of the latest championship news from the past few days. And we've got this report from TalkSport, and it involves Cardiff. They're weighing up whether to sack manager Erol Bulut. They're bottom of the table, of course, with just 1 point from their first 5 games. And there's reportedly a negative atmosphere in the dressing room, with senior players questioning Bulut's methods. Now, it seems like time is not on Bulut's side, Justin. I think that's fair to say. If you were running Cardiff City, would you think it's time for a change?
If I was running Cardiff City...
what would be the first thing you'd do if you were running Cardiff City?
Put a clause in my contract eliminating a direct line of communication from Vincent Tan. That would be a start. Not that I'd be in a position to demand those things. What would I do? I think I would fire an ultimatum to Erol Bulut and see what he says. If he bites back, then I would probably go in a different direction, because, you know, he's I've long praised his passion, but there's a point where the passion runs its course and you start having to be practical. You start having to sort of not lay blame on the players, but also start to question your own methods. I think a really good example of this is he's dealing with Ollie Tanner and him being called out for his fitness, which was really unfair, really unfair. And I think that's probably points towards the atmosphere in the dressing room amongst senior players. And I think as well is the club changes quickly. I mean, this is a very peak time of year for Cardiff to change the manager. If you go through all previous managers, they get sacked in the autumn more often than not. The likes of Solskjaer, from Solskjaer to Neil Warnock to Mick McCarthy, they get sacked around this time of year very, very often.
Steve Morrison as well, Justin.
Yeah, Steve Morrison. The list is very, very long. They've had a lot of managers. So yeah, I think I would start to be questioning Erol Bulut myself if I was running Cardiff City, because as I say, the results are poor. The squad's better than the results are being put out. The squad's certainly better than some of the creative stats suggest as well. So yeah, I would start to question whether or not Bulut's still got the dressing room, which is a shame, because it looked like it was going in a positive direction, especially in terms of fan atmosphere. So yeah, this to take a turn is, I wouldn't say a surprise, but it's certainly not ideal.
Yeah, I don't like calling for a manager to be sacked. However, it's getting to the stage now where it's difficult to see this being turned around because they have been so bad, haven't they? Particularly in attack. I know we keep banging on about that, but just the one goal scored so far and the underlying data paints a pretty horrifying picture. And then when you've got things like him not turning up to do interviews after games and reports of the dressing room turning on him, it only seems to be going one way. And when you've got the tide of these kind of things pushing you in one direction, I think you've just got to go with it eventually. The only reason why I would say Cardiff should hold off from sacking him is you've got Leeds coming up next. Just throw him to the wolves, you know. You may as well.
But the thing is with that, you know, Bulut, they could get an unlikely 1-0 win. It'd be very Championship for that to be the case, and it just give everybody a false dawn that things are turning around, and then they go and play a team who have lost 6 on the trot and lose to that team themselves, Cardiff, that is. So for me, a decision needs to be made very, very quickly. I think that's the thing, because Cardiff need to get a list of potentials drawn up and go down that route.
I imagine they've probably already started that, haven't they, Justin?
I don't know, just Cardiff do not give me the confidence.
If you were the sporting director, as we've been fantasising about for the past few minutes, if you were trying to be sensible, you'd already have a little list drawn up and stuck in your drawer somewhere, wouldn't you?
I'm sensible, though. I will do that. Cardiff won't. So there's a fantasy there of being a sporting director myself and thinking that, but Cardiff cannot give you any indication that the club is I wouldn't say run effectively, but run with common sense, and that's been the case for a long time under Vincent Tan and whoever else is in amongst the club. I just don't think they have the foresight to see, these things. I mean, I know I've criticised it, but John Malta's being very practical and very proactive in the search for Stephen Schumacher's replacement before he's even been sacked. That it's not a nice thing, but that's unfortunately how football works. And I just don't think Cardiff do that. I think they'll sit on a caretaker manager for 5 or 6 games before appointing a potential successor, because as I say, the club do not strike me as one that is run particularly smoothly or with calm heads.
Well, what I would add to that is you've got to think back to Cardiff's recent appointments as well. I mean, we'll have more of an in-depth chat about this if the almost inevitable does happen over the next week. But you think back to a couple of seasons ago when they sacked Steve Morrison, and then they put Mark Hudson in caretaker charge for a while, and he didn't really work out at all. And then they eventually got in Sabri Lamouchi, who kind of salvaged their season, really, didn't he? And then they got rid of him after he doing a pretty decent job. And then they got Bulut in, and I think they kind of just stumbled upon a decent. Well, to be fair, he's probably been one of the more successful managers in recent years. Probably even their most successful since possibly Warnock, I guess you can make an argument for. But obviously it's not worked out now. And where they go next, as I say, we'll have more of a chat about this if it does happen. But that would be a concern from my perspective, I've certainly got to say. Let's move from Cardiff to Luton, because their wing-back Alfie Doughty has signed a new contract extension. The club haven't revealed how long it is, but the player says it's a relief to sign the new deal. And this is another example, Justin, of a player signing a new contract long after the window closes, following a summer where they've been linked with a move throughout. It keeps happening.
It does. I mean, it's very practical to get contracts done outside of a transfer window, because there's going to be a lot of interest. There's going to be a lot of, your agent's going to be busy. Your negotiating team, I don't know who they would be, comprising of a financial officer and CEO, etc. They're going to be busy, dealing with recruitment. So contracts likely to get done outside of a transfer window anyway, just to be a bit more logical. But yeah, it's just a weird habit football has. But as you say, I think from Alfie Doughty's perspective, there was a lot of links. He did have a good Premier League season. He's a very effective player for Luton. Probably not started in the best of form himself. I was going to say
he's been pretty poor so far, actually, hasn't he? Not as good as I was expecting. But maybe this contract may be a turnaround thing for him, Justin.
But why? Why would it be a turnaround for him? Is it
because of uncertainty that was flowing through his head in the first 5 games, and now he's like, "Oh, I've got a new contract now. Great! I'm actually going to be able to beat the first man from a corner now."
Yeah, that's always a good sign of a player being distracted, is whether or not they can actually effectively take a corner, which they haven't been. But it's just weird. It's just it's strange how football works in that sense. Because for me, you're at your club until you're not at the club, right? Surely that's a logical thing.
I mean, that does make sense because he's still at the club now, and as far as I'm aware, he's still at the club. He's not left the club, so that.
But how? But I don't. I think
he's still at the club until he's left the club.
But why does
it? Or was it either way?
Yeah, no. I realise it's a really thick thing to say, but what I mean by it is that the 90 minutes you put out on a Saturday at 3:00. Why does your mindset change? Why does a player's mindset change if your head's potentially turned? I don't get it. Just go out, give it your all, and just beat the first man at a corner.
Yeah, I don't think his head will have been turned now because of obviously the transfer window being closed. But hopefully this just, I don't know, focuses the mind or something like that. I don't know. We've spent way too long talking about this, Justin.
I will add. I imagine you have to go on Rightmove in your spare time. So that downtime footballers have playing on the PlayStation goes because you've got to start looking for a house.
I don't think modern footballers have to do that nowadays. I feel like there's people who do that for them, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Right? It's fun going on Rightmove.
It is quite fun going on Rightmove, actually, just seeing what's available,
Yeah. So maybe that's why Alfie Doughty has been poor. He's spent too much time on Rightmove in August.
Maybe. As I say, I don't think that's. I think that's sorted out for him nowadays. Debunked. But maybe he's just looking interested. Maybe he's just looking in interest. I don't know. We'll have to find out at some point, won't we? Let's move on because we spent way too long talking about that. Preston. They've helped set a new record for the longest penalty shootout in League Cup history. There were 34 spot kicks in their meeting with Fulham on Tuesday. 34. It finished 16-15. It involved both goalkeepers taking ones, and the original 5 penalty takers had to retake their penalties. So much to divulge here, Justin, but the first thing that came to mind for me is 34 penalties, 16 plus 15 means 31 was scored. How shit are these goalkeepers at saving penalties? Only 3 out of 34 didn't go in.
No comment on Freddie Woodman there. I will add, firstly, all the youngsters who went to this game or watched this game from a Preston or Fulham perspective, you will never forget this penalty shootout in your life. We'll probably forget it. But I remember watching an African Cup of Nations game. It was between Cameroon and somebody else, and that penalty shootout was one of the longest ones recorded at the time. And I don't forget that one. I don't forget that one, despite forgetting the other team in that. But this is
was it because you were just there like, please, someone just bloody score?
I was watching this last night. I tuned in after 18 minutes of the penalty shootout had gone. Oh I can't remember how many spot kicks were taken at that point, but almost 20 minutes of penalties.
Wow.
It's fucking boring, isn't it?
That is unbelievable. Usually a penalty shootout, even for a neutral, is just fantastic. But when it's been going on for 20 minutes, that's just insane. It was Freddie Woodman and Stephen Bender in goal, who were teammates at Swansea 4 years ago, by the way. A needless bit of trivia. I checked their respective penalty records. These don't include shootouts, but Woodman has a 26% save percentage from penalties in his career, which is actually okay. No idea why his penalty instincts completely abandoned him in this game. Stephen Bender has a 17% record, but to only save, well, for only 3 out of 34 not to go in, that means one team only failed to score 1 penalty in 17. I genuinely reckon I could do better in goal than that.
Potentially. I think I might be able to as well. So statistically there, Freddie Woodman should have saved 1 in 5 of those penalties.
No, 1 in 4.
1 in 4?
Yeah.
1 in 5, 1 in 4. He should have saved more than however many he did. I think it was Timothy Castagne missed the decisive penalty for Fulham. But yeah, it's just, at what point, as well as a footballer, do you think, oh, fuck this? I'm just going to close it.
I was going to say, imagine being a fan of that game. After 20 minutes, you'd just be like, oh, for fuck's sake, can someone just miss on purpose, please? The cup is not worth it at this stage. I just want to go home and see my family.
But all the journalists as well having to stay past 10 o'clock to watch 25 minutes of penalties. Oh, my God.
Yeah, and all the headlines. Because they wouldn't know who's won, would they, until the very last kick, so they won't have any idea what to put as their headline for any piece that they're writing. Although I suppose the headline would be "longest penalty shootout ever." Ridiculous. Speaking of the League Cup, a bit of Championship nostalgia for us was on offer at Loftus Road. Eberechi Eze stayed behind after Crystal Palace's league game with his former club QPR to meet fans and take photos after the game. And two things came to mind for me when I saw this, Justin. First of all, Eberechi Eze seems like such a top lad, doesn't he? But it reminded me of how good he was in the Championship with QPR. I spent a big period of this morning watching compilations of him in a Rangers shirt. I miss him, Justin, so much.
It's very rare we get to keep hold of a player of his quality in the Championship, so I will let you off for spending your morning as a 30-year-old watching compilations of a footballer.
Unfortunately, it wasn't like the Barclaysman trend where you had... I don't know,
Klaxons.
golden scans by the Klaxons playing over the top of it, but he was just so good. And I think the thing is with him is he's one of the rare players who is playing exactly the same in the Premier League as he did in the Championship, where you just give him the ball and just let him play. It's fantastic.
Yeah, you rarely get players who treat football criminally as it should be. As it should be. He almost defines a Barclaysman because he's none of this XG nonsense. Just give him the ball and watch him work with it.
If he is still at Crystal Palace for the next 5 years and doesn't move to a big club, he will be a certified Barclaysman, won't he? In fact, that Crystal Palace team in general will be a bit of a Barclays team, I suppose, won't it?
Yeah, when the trend kicks up again in 10 years' time, and we get compilations of what's that Carpenter lady called, the singer?
Oh, Sabrina Carpenter.
Yeah, we'll get that overlaid with on a compilation of Eze's best moments at Palace.
God, is that the best music they're going to put over the top of it?
It probably is. We are devoid of quality in the music industry, but that's another debate.
Well, we don't have like indie bands nowadays, do we? Because
died.
Because of the Pigeon Detectives and what have you. They weren't exactly massive in the charts, but everyone knew about them. I don't know who you'd have in 10 years' time. Is it still the Barclays Premier League nowadays? It is, isn't it?
It must be.
So I guess they would.
We don't need to know that anyway. Yeah, we don't need to know that.
No, we don't care. But I don't know whether it'd still be a Barclaysman or not. But what I'm trying to say is that the music, would it have to be Taylor Swift and Sabrina Carpenter playing over the top? It just doesn't hit the same, does it?
It doesn't. But that's not football.
That's football.
That's football, baby. That's football.
And the only other bit of League Cup madness to mention is the Portsmouth fan who was at Everton v Southampton. He was in he was sat in the Everton end, Portsmouth shirt on, Portsmouth flag, made absolutely no attempt to hide that he wasn't an Everton fan, and sat as close to the Southampton end as possible as well. Was unsurprisingly asked to leave during the game, Justin.
It's good shithousery, but also it's almost a bit pointless. He clearly must live up there. You don't make that trip,
I'd have thought so.
I'd have thought so.
Surely he's not travelled from Portsmouth to Liverpool to antagonise Southampton fans and then be asked to leave the game halfway through.
Antagonise Southampton fans in a League Cup second round game. Is it second round or third round? One of the two. You don't do that. But fair play for the cojones on him. I've got not much else to say about that other than better things to do on your Tuesday night, Wednesday night, whatever. Yeah.
Why do fans get asked to leave for this kind of thing? Because they've paid for the ticket, haven't they? Is it breaking any rules to be wearing?
He might have been relocated.
I didn't look like he got relocated. It looked like he got kicked out the ground, Justin, as he was waving his Portsmouth flag when the stewards were escorting him out.
Yeah. It's just you're antagonising, aren't you? You're causing social disorder.
Yeah, but I don't think it's worth getting kicked out of the ground when you've paid for your ticket. I don't know. Maybe I've missed something here, and a steward will be able to get in touch and let us know why. I don't know. I think it's time for us to end the show there, isn't it, ladies and gents?